Good afternoon. My name is Bernie Orvac, and I am publisher at Barish Media and the Sumter County Gazette in State College, Pennsylvania. I'm pleased to welcome you to the PNA Community Newspaper Forum. Newspapers are vital in Pennsylvania and around the country. Readers learn about what is happening in their local area at a very grassroots level. They are informed, educated, and entertained by all our publications. During today's sessions, leaders from community newspapers will share insights from their personal successful programs. We are joined this afternoon by Eliza Gaines, the managing editor at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Kayla Green, the executive editor at the Sumter Item, Josh Schneps, the CEO and co-publisher at Schneps Media, Tom Shaw, the vice president and chief product officer at Shaw Media, and leading our panel is Nu Yang, editor-in-chief of our industry-leading magazine, editor and publisher. I would like to thank each of our panelists for joining us today. You can find more about our speakers' full biographies on today's event page. What I'd like to do at this time is invite Nu to begin today's discussion. So Nu, thank you for leading today's discussion, and I look forward to learning from everyone on today's panel.
Thank you, Bernie. Let me just share my screen and get that going. So let's get started. Today, we've kind of gathered community news leaders to discuss how they're transforming the companies for the better. We've collected an array of ideas that touches both print and digital, and we hope you learn something new today that you can take back to your newsrooms. First, we have Tom Shaw, who's here to discuss about a digital local news network that they just launched in Northern Illinois. And again, just a reminder that if you have any questions during these presentations, to use the chat button to leave your questions. We can save those at the end and talk about that. So Tom, if you want to get started, let me just go ahead and do that. It's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Nu. And I just want to say thanks to everyone. I'm honored to be here and happy to share what we've been going through recently and trying to keep our business model pointed towards the future of sustainability. So I've been with the company, Shaw Media, for 15 years. Our company has been around for 170 years. We believe we're the third oldest continuously owned and operated newspaper in the country. And I am a sixth generation family member and employee of the company. So it's been a challenging but exciting time for me and my peers. We are based in Illinois and predominantly Illinois, starting with the Chicago suburbs and kind of covering northern Illinois. And then we have a few markets in Iowa as well. And we have a mix of daily and weekly newspapers, magazines, niche publications, and local news websites. So basically what I'm here to talk about today is a project that we launched back in December. We've been focused on growing digital subscriptions as a revenue growth source, and we've had moderate to good success over the last few years, and we've seen it really become something bigger and bigger up into the point where we realized that this had become our biggest revenue growth strategy. Some of the digital advertising strategies we've employed over the last decade that had fueled our growth to offset the traditional advertising declines had slowed down in their growth. We still do a lot of digital advertising, but digital subscription growth, we've seen double-digit growth for the last 5 years now. And about almost 2 years ago, we really started talking about how do we keep this going in a substantial way so that this could ultimately put us on a path to sustainability to support our local journalism. And so out of those strategic discussions and looking around at what other companies are doing, we decided to take several steps. And the biggest kind of public-facing one we launched in December, and that was that we rolled out a new brand that basically connects all of our hyperlocal newspapers as one network. So before we made this move, each of our newspapers or each of our groupings of newspapers in Illinois and Iowa had their own websites. And these are all very hyper-local. This is local high school, local school board, those sorts of things. And that works very well for print, differentiates us, but online it is very limiting to scale, and it's limiting to brand. It's really hard to effectively market multiple different brands when you're trying to get more people to be aware of who you are and to come to your sites more often in the hopes that eventually they'll convert to a subscriber. So we landed on the news network idea basically because we wanted to put it in the minds of our community residents and our readers that their local paper was part of something bigger, but it still provided the hyperlocal news that they came for in the first place. So we didn't want to do anything that diminished the value of the newspaper brand itself. But we wanted to make them part of something bigger that would be easier for us to have a consistent message. We also know that in order to continue to grow digital subscriptions at the level we need to cast a wider net. Right now, there's only a certain percentage of your unique visitors in your community who will convert to subscribers. And so we need to be able to reach the people who traditionally might have been in between those markets. And this allows us to kind of fill in some gaps with some coverage that we do some of, but may have previously been considered, adjacent type market. So that network has allowed us to do that. So we launched this in December. And this is the first time we've used the Shaw branding to consumers. In the past, we've used Shaw Media Marketing for our business side, so the business community is familiar with it. But up until December, our readers were just familiar with the names of our papers, like Northwest Herald or Kane County Chronicle, for example. So it's kind of a balancing act where we are doing everything we can to grow traffic, grow awareness of the network, while at the same time not doing anything to diminish the value of the individual newspaper brands. What it's allowed us to do is to really, it's done a few things. Internally, it's given us an easier opportunity to utilize content and test what might be relevant in certain circumstances that we just didn't get to before. So, for example, earlier this year, in the midst of lots of bad news, we had an animal break out in one of our markets in Peru that we all thought was a kangaroo, and then we thought it was a wallaby, but then it turned out to be what's called a wallaroo. I didn't know this till this story broke, but it's a thing that looks like a small kangaroo that hopped around the town for like 2 hours until they caught it, and it jumped in a river, and then a boatsman caught it and saved its life. And that story trended across all of our markets because it was kind of something regionally relevant and something that is kind of a refreshing story after a lot of real tough news. And so now that we can play that across the whole network, it's just easier to see when things are relevant and when things aren't. I should go back and say that when we made this change, we switched from basically 25 different news sites all to one URL. So the URL is shawlocal.com, and then people who bookmarked or used to typing in the old newspaper get redirected directly to that part of the website. So that was on the internal side an advantage. On the external side, we've been pushing this idea for a while that if you're a digital subscriber to any of our products, that you could access the news in any of our other products in Illinois. But because they're all separate sites, there's a lot of login and re-login and log out type issues that caused a lot of friction in the reader experience. So when we went to one site, that all went away. And now if someone logs in, they stay logged in and can get in and through any of the different sites or niche sites that we have. That's also, speaking of niche sites, really given that type of content access to a much wider audience. If we had lifestyle magazines, for example, in single markets, It would never be able to stand alone as a website to really monetize, but now we can run that kind of content or tourist content through the whole network, and we're able to put that content in front of a much wider audience. That's what we've done, and so far, again, it's still just kind of new and out of the gate. I'd love to come back in a year and tell you, what the full results have been. But I'll tell you a few challenges and benefits that we've seen from it. Well, I should also say, in conjunction with launching the network, we restructured our staffs at the same time. Our local editorial teams used to do a mix of local writing and assigning, but then they also had their hand in laying out parts of the paper. We moved to a model where the local editorial teams are really just focused on digital engagement and assigning for stories that are most likely to convert. We really focus heavily on analytics. We use Parsley and Google Analytics to work with the editors and the reporters to see every day, every week, what is converting, and they really focus their assignments on that. And then we have a consolidated print team that puts out all of the papers using the recommendations from the editors, using the analytics for what's trended, and using the content that's been generated. One of the key things going back before the network we realized was, especially doing frequency changes in print, is we switched to daily day parting. So the local teams have daily deadlines basically instead of print deadlines. And that's really been effective, especially in weekly markets in growing digital, because you need to have reasons for people to come back to your site multiple times through the day, and that just doesn't happen if there's regular cadence of fresh content. So with that, the print team has a lot more content than they used to work with to choose what goes in the paper. And when we made that switch organizationally, we immediately saw an improvement with our growth of digital subscriptions because of that focus on the analytics and the day parting especially. So some of the biggest challenges with this are that getting that communication right between the local teams and the print desk. The print desk is not in each market, doesn't fully understand all the events that go on. And so we're constantly trying to improve the access to analytics, making the data actionable, and improving that communication flow between the local teams and the print desk. As far as this idea of regional and local content, that's one of the biggest challenges we have, and it continues to be a work in progress. Like, people just don't want more content, and they want relevant content, and especially in print, our print readers are extremely sensitive to things that are maybe portrayed as local but are actually regional or out of market. So we're very sensitive to that. And then there's also an element when you're really digging into the analytics where it's kind of touchy when you're dealing with maybe people who've worked on a really long enterprise project and it just didn't do anything to convert, and you're trying to not deflate them for wanting to go do some really good writing, but at the same time trying in a way to effectively move our focus towards work that is getting people to subscribe to our journalism. So those are, and then churn, just if any of you spend time in this space, you know that getting people in is one thing, but then keeping them is the other, and that's something that we continue to unpack. The benefit is that the marketing has become much more streamlined. Getting the people to be able to stay in and not keep getting kicked out of their sites has been very beneficial. We have more content to play with, so it's in terms of doing newsletters and keep getting reason for people to be engaged and come back to the site. That's been very effective. And we've been able to continue, even though we've seen some of the news lift that we had organically last year with all the COVID stuff. Well, some of that started to decline. We've been able to continue to grow our digital subscribers at a very high rate. So so far so good. I'm happy to check back in at whatever time's appropriate to let you guys know how it's going or answer questions. But that's what we've been working on.
Thank you, Tom, for that. We do have some questions coming in, but again, we'll save that towards the end. So if you have any more questions, again, as we continue doing the presentations, keep signing them in the chat box. So next we have Eliza Gaines at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. A few years ago, you probably know that the Democrat-Gazette launched an iPad experiment, and I'm sure people are looking forward to hearing an update on what's going on there today. So Eliza, let me just move that. Okay. And just let me know when you want me to change the slides as you speak. So take it.
Sure.
Go ahead, Eliza.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me
Yep.
okay? Okay,
Yep.
great. So I'm Eliza Gaines. I'm the managing editor of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. I just started as editor last year. So my first day of work as editor was the first day we sent everybody home. It was in March 2020. So that was an interesting experience, but it's been a great year so far, and I've enjoyed stepping into this new role. Like Tom, this is a family business for me. I'm the fourth generation of my family to be in the newspaper industry. The Democrat-Gazette, where I'm editor, is owned by Waco Media, and we have several other newspapers as well. So today I'm going to talk about how our company found a new way to deliver a newspaper and deliver community journalism. So some background. The Democrat-Gazette is a statewide newspaper, and it's our company's biggest newspaper. So a couple years ago, we were delivering a print edition to all 75 counties in Arkansas. And as you can imagine, it carried a lot of expense, production costs, and carrier costs, and material costs like newsprint and ink. And so in 2018, we were at a crossroads. We'd been profitable for over 20 consecutive years, and in 2018, we were looking at a loss. We did not want to cut our news hole or drastically reduce our newsroom because subscriptions were driving the revenue. And we realized that there was no way that print could compete with the economics of delivering content digitally. So the publisher, who happens to be my father, Walter Hussman, came up with a possible solution. What if we stopped home delivery of the print newspaper except on Sundays, and instead offered subscribers a free iPad to read an exact replica of the print edition? So they'd still have the experience of reading the newspaper, but we would incur the cost of print delivery. So 79% of subscribers kept their subscription, which we thought was a great success. We gave away thousands of iPads. Some people already had tablets, so they didn't want an iPad, but they kept their subscription. The key here was keeping the exact same format readers enjoyed in print in a digital format. We didn't want readers to see the iPad as a substitute for the real thing, but an enhanced experience of the newspaper. So readers can click on the stories to read them more easily. You can click on a photo and it'll a photo gallery pop up, or a video. And it's kind of small, but you can see on the far right, we have the Memphis Bridge story. And this is the bridge that connects Arkansas and Tennessee. And a large crack was discovered recently. And we now know it had been there since 2019. So when you click on the photo in that story, you can see a photo gallery and a video, and you can listen to a 911 call from when the crack was found a couple weeks ago. You can zoom in on text. You can have the app read stories to you. You can share stories through email or social. And below the daily editions, in that middle picture, you can see we have a news feed of stories that come on our website throughout the day. We do single copy sales still, and we do home delivery on Sunday. But because the cost of print is not a deterrent, we can easily add pages. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we added 4 pages of state and national COVID statistics, and then more recently, we added a page with vaccination information. Another example that's a little more fun, ahead of Mother's Day, we asked readers what they loved most about their mom or their mother figure, and then we shared some of those responses in an extra page with some beautiful artwork. So that's just one example of how we can add something very easily without having to worry about the cost of newsprint. And then we also have extra replica pages in the A section and the sports and the business sections. Next slide.
Got it. There you go.
So this was a successful transition for our newspaper, and we have had good reader engagement and good reader retention. The Spiegel Research Center analyzed more than 3 years of data from the ADG to understand the effect of this model on the retention of paying subscribers. And we found that customer service was really key during this transition. We had one-on-one trainings with readers on the iPad and good communication about the process. And we were very honest about the economics and why this change was necessary. And I also think it speaks to the quality of our journalism and the loyalty of our subscribers. So we have not drastically cut our newsroom or our content over the years like so many newspapers have done or have had to do. And since our conversion, 4 more of the company's newspapers have converted from a 7-day print publication to a 7-day digital replica on the iPad. And obviously iPads are very expensive and the training is expensive. So what we did was we, for these smaller newspapers, we issued preferred stock to people in the community who didn't want to see their local newspaper disappear. So we got literal buy-in from these communities. And we hope that this could offer a model for other newspapers to, if they wanted to try this or experiment, something that they could copy to cover those large upfront costs. Excuse me. Next slide. So as I mentioned, with digital, we have much more opportunity to expand our content. We have replica-only community pages that give readers in that part of the state coverage that they would not receive from other outlets. This is a River Valley page, and it's one page, and we run it once a week, but we hope to eventually increase the page count and the frequency it runs. Right now, it's only 1 reporter that we have dedicated to this page, but we hope to have 2 eventually. Next slide. We also bought a newspaper called the Pine Bluff Commercial, and we incorporated 4 pages of that paper into our replica edition. And the Pine Bluff Commercial was once a really, truly great community newspaper, but it had been struggling for a couple of years, and we did not want that community to lose its paper. And we have 2 reporters and an editor dedicated to those pages, and a clerk who does things like community briefs and church news. In our rule here is no wire content in these Pine Bluff Commercial pages. Next. So I wanted to end on this slide with a quote from The Expanding News Desert by Penny Abernathy. And Penny was my journalism professor and advisor at UNC, and she's done a lot of research on saving community newspapers. And she's now at the Medill School and collaborates with their local news initiative. So I think the bottom line is community journalism is disappearing, and the 7-day print publication is just not a business model that works for many newspapers anymore. And I'm not suggesting that our iPad experiment would work for every community newspaper in America, but there are a couple of things that we think are valuable to share with other newspapers. And some of those things are that digital delivery of the exact same format of the printed newspaper is sustainable. The most important thing is to invest in your newsroom. The printed newspaper is not the product, it's a platform. Journalism is the product. If it's valuable enough, people will want to read it anywhere. And that content has to be local, unique, and reliable. Consider digital-only pages dedicated to smaller surrounding communities and pair those with weekly newsletters. Don't think of digital as a substitute for print, but a superior product. It should not be an afterthought. Work on improving it now, and if you eventually have to make the switch to digital only, the product won't seem like an inferior substitution. Most newspapers offer a reduced price for a digital only subscription, and we have not done that. We charge the same amount for digital access as we do for an iPad or a Sunday home delivery subscription. Again, readers are paying for the journalism, not how it's delivered. If you do make the switch to digital only, give readers plenty of notice and be honest about the economics of your business and why you're making the change, and get buy-in from your community. People trust local journalism, and local news is crucial to our democracy, so make that your message. And that's the end of my presentation.
Great, thank you, Eliza. Very informational information there with iPad. I know a lot of people in industry are, still keep an eye on you guys and on how that's going. Again, we have questions coming in, but continue to send your questions to the chat box. So next we have Josh Schnaps from the Schnapps Media. Josh's mother, Victoria, started her newspaper in the living room in the 80s, and now they're one of the largest local media companies in the state. So Josh is going to talk about some of the latest projects that they have going on there. So go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, hello everybody from Brooklyn, New York. Great to be here. I hope it's as beautiful where you are as it is here in New York today. Tom and Eliza certainly had me beat. I'm only second generation. I've been working with my mom for 20 years, but one of our titles, the Long Island Press, is celebrating our 200th anniversary this year, which is a great testament to the brand and the business that we're in. I guess I'm just going to kind of talk off the cuff how I look at our business and how we've grown our business over the years, and where I think kind of everybody's mindset should be in terms of media, just in terms of my experience of how to be viable, successful, and growing. And I think a big part of that is being diversified and having scale in your market. We're in New York City, so obviously it's one of the largest markets, media markets in the country. It's really where the backbone of our business is. We do own Metro Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and we do serve Long Island and some of the most wealthy enclaves in the country, the Hamptons, which many of you may know. But being in such a competitive market, you have to be diversified, and you also have to have scale. And being diversified is not really the way I look at print. We have to be as platform agnostic as possible. And we do that in a few different ways. We have 70 plus titles, and a lot of them are super niche, either by language or by topic, and obviously by community. We print over 1 million copies a week. So obviously print is still extremely viable, and I'd probably challenge anyone to tell me to find something more profitable than an additional print page, because even digital comes along with a lot of expenses, especially as you invest in it. But being first in class in digital. So, really thinking of, and I love, Tom, what you said about your newsroom, is really having the reporters write for digital and letting the editors worry about where it goes in print. Because if you're not thinking quickly, moving quickly, and keeping the quality high, it's really going to impact your reach, digitally speaking. And we focused on having digital editors for each of our verticals, really several years ago, and launching digital brands that kind of were unique to our markets. And I think, during the pandemic, having a large digital reach probably made the difference for us, because we were able to do so much through our websites. And I'm a big proponent of email newsletters. We have about 600,000 emails that go out every day, but they're going out to 50 different lists based on topic or region. And it's a great way to connect with our readers. We produce over 100 events a year. So obviously that was dramatically impacted because of COVID. And we do all different types of events. And I certainly, recommend publishers that aren't doing events to challenge yourself and do them. And the best way of doing them is just to start doing one. We started with an event that was, my mom obviously is still very engaged and involved. We started with an event called Top 10 Women in Business, where she just got 10 women together. And that event over the last 20 years has now grown into 7 different Power Women events that had attendance of 1,000 each when they were live. Now we're broadcasting the events. We're doing hybrids where the honorees come and get their awards, we record them, and then we broadcast the events. And we're also doing webinars where clients pay us to be interviewed and to talk on their topics. And we're doing about 3 to 5 of those a week, which have been a great source of revenue, but also a great way to stay connected with our clients and offering them something that's really different. And then just going back to the events, we also do a lot of consumer events, health events, food and drink events. I ran a flea market, a flea and food market, like high-end market prior to COVID for about 7 years. And more or less, we have great brands and great reach. So, a lot of times we underestimate what we can do on our own with our brands to promote other businesses that can connect with the community in a lot of different ways. We really started newspapers. My mom started in her living room with one newspaper. I've been with her for 20 years. We slowly started newspapers. And then probably 15 years ago, we made a first acquisition, which was smaller. And over time, we kind of grew through larger acquisitions. Most recently, before COVID, we acquired daily newspapers, which was risky, but it's given us a tremendous scale in our market, and also the website that came along with it. So I think, I don't know what else I could share except to say that I look at our company as a diversified media company, not a newspaper company. Newspapers are a critical aspect of our company, but I think by communicating to our staff that we are a media company, it really reinforces, what their goals should be in terms of, editorially speaking, not writing for a newspaper, but writing for a media outlet. And then from the sales perspective, that they're not just selling a print ad, they're selling what can be print, digital events, and broadcasting. So I think the future is bright for media. I just think that we have to stay one step ahead. We're never going to be Google or Facebook, but I do think that for people that want coverage, we're a tremendous asset. Digitally speaking, I don't think that there's anything more powerful than sponsored content, because it's coming from reliable sources, and it's something that could be sent through our email newsletters or social channels, and it's something that Facebook can offer. And I think that that'll be a growing part of our business. Subscriptions is going to be a tough one in New York because it's just such a competitive market. But I do think that it's a very viable thing in the future. I remember buying one of our community newspapers, and there was a 6-foot vault inside the publisher's office. I said, well, what is this for? He said, when we collected all the cash from all the subscriptions, from all the newsstands. So obviously people did pay for content. And I think the evolution will come back to that, but I think it probably depends on market and the quality of what you do. So obviously the quality of your content is going to drive everything else, but I think content should be broadcast in many, many different ways, and events is one of those ways.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Josh, for all that. All right. And now we're going to pass it on to Kayla at the Sumter Item in Sumter, South Carolina, who will share how their small newsroom has utilized video successfully in their community. So go ahead, Kayla. And let me know when you want me to do the slides too.
Okay, thanks. Thanks y'all for having me today. And it's interesting seeing the multi-generation family-owned newspapers kind of go down the line of, from 6 to 4 to 2. We have a different kind of family newspaper story, and so I'll go ahead and get into that. The Sumter Item is located in Sumter, South Carolina, and we are a 126-year-old newspaper. Has been family owned by the Osteens the entire time. They are currently in the 5th generation of ownership, and I am not an Osteen. So the story with that goes that our publisher now, Vince Johnson, is the first non-family member to run the Item, and the Osteens brought him in 2017. And myself and our chief digital officer worked with Vince in just north of Atlanta in Forsyth County, Georgia. And so we all came over here to try to kind of replicate some of the video successes that we saw in Atlanta. And so just as a side note with the family aspect, chief digital officer is my husband. So we run it from that side of the family. And we produce 5 print editions a week. We're Tuesday through Saturday with the weekend edition on Saturday. And we cover 3 counties in the Midlands of South Carolina. And we have a staff of about 30. So go to the next slide. Okay, so when we came in, you know, both to Atlanta and now into South Carolina, one of the first things that we tried to kind of fill the hole of is what's missing, what type of community storytelling, what type of local news is not being told, and whether that is a byproduct of shrinking newsrooms and, you know, less people being able to cover what's happening in their communities. We saw that often the people who were trying to cover more with less kind of had to resort to covering that hard news and covering a lot of crime and, you know, covering just what is given to them to fill the newspaper. And with print subscriptions declining, we thought of ways to try to bring a new type of storytelling to audiences where they already are. So we came up with a video department called Studio Sumter. We know that there are a lot of stories that either just can't fit in the newspaper, that probably shouldn't be, you know, that lend themselves better to visual storytelling. And so we got it sponsored first, which is what we always try to do. Currently we have 4 sponsors on Studio Sumter and Sumter Today, which is our flagship news show. So Sumter Today is a 5-day-a-week, Monday through Friday, online video news show that we are able to premiere for free to people, so you don't have to be a subscriber to any part of the item in order to watch it because it's sponsored. And those sponsors it's a hospital and a local college, so they're companies that are that want to get that good news brand awareness out there. The focus of Sumter Today is that it's all positive news. So that if that's what was missed in the print newspaper, then we only talk about good news. And so that allows sponsors to not be worried about what type of, you know, breaking hard news is attached to that brand name. So we go into schools to talk about what students are doing, you know, and on the other side of that is we still have our reporters, our education reporter, covering the school board and covering, you know, the hard news that needs to be done and that accountability. But on the other side, parents want to see what their kids are doing in the classroom, and that lends itself very well to video. So we premiere it on Facebook and on our website, and we have expanded Sumter Today now into other aspects too with our video department. So because it's sponsored, we were able, from the get-go, we were able to pay for a video editor for his salary, and we were able to pay for equipment to get it started. So we're not adding on any additional work to our current, you know, small newsroom. We are able to pay for people to come in and just focus on that video production side of it. And they produce commercials for local companies. They produce videos for our Best of Sumter, our Reader's Choice contest, which we run through 2nd Street. They have been commissioned to produce documentaries for the city before, so they can really do you know, anything that a local TV station might be able to do, which we don't have in Sumter. So TV news would come in and again cover crime and then leave. But since we had no visual storytelling media in our coverage area, we were able to kind of capitalize on that. So we can go to the next slide. And so this is just some of the outcomes that we've seen through starting Sumter Today. Other companies have wanted to jump on board, and in addition to starting with 3 sponsors on Sumter Today, we've added a 4th, and we are now running multiple sponsored content series, whether that's different contests or feature stories. So we have like a teacher of the month that a local restaurant sponsors. And again, through 2nd Street, we run the contest. The winner gets a gift card to the restaurant and the public votes on it. They don't have to be a subscriber. And it is all online focused. We just started a new editorial series called The Grind, which is just an athlete of the week. And that has a print and a video component to it. And again, that is sponsored. And so we run it twice a week in print, twice a month in print. And then there's a video interview part of that. And again, that, since it's sponsored, that is free to non-subscribers. So that's our big focus is, said sponsored like 4,000 times already, but to get it sponsored from the start so that, again, we're not adding extra work. Everything that we do, whether it's video, we also have a podcast network now where we are producing podcasts, and we have community members. For example, we have a local realtor who pays us to come into our studio and we produce their podcast for them. It's getting that revenue there from the get-go and not adding that additional work on our writers and on our, again, small newsroom. Everything is very intentional. We're not just having our writers go and shoot video of something they're already covering just to get that content online. Everything that we do is about either growing our audience or growing revenue. And as you can see, those are some of the outcomes we've seen. And I think that one of the main takeaways from what we've learned is that coming from Atlanta and now being in South Carolina, we've done this in 2 very different markets. The North Atlanta market, the median income was over $100,000, and now in Sumter it's about $40,000. So we can do this in multiple markets, whether it's big or small. It's just all about connecting with the community and growing those deeper connections in an intentional way. So finding a way to tell stories and not just put content out there just for the sake of putting content out there, because everyone has a million different things to choose from, especially when they're on their phone. So making it worthwhile for people to want to sit down and watch or read for a couple minutes. And that's it.
All right, so let's get to some of the Q&A, some questions that we have going on here. Thank you again to Tom, Eliza, Josh, and Kayla. Great information there for community newsrooms. All right. Let me just scroll down here. And Josh, I had a question for you as far as the acquisition business. How did you guys know, what made you guys start, get into the acquisition side of acquiring more papers for the company?
I mean, the biggest thing is people reach out to us that are in our geographic area. And I think that is really the best way, is not like pursuing things, but having people come to you. But the other is it's really not a viable business to start a print product now. But I think, through acquisitions, it can make sense depending on how they're structured. So I would just say, for us, we recognize that we had to have a certain scale and serve a certain geographic area. And, as you grow, you're also able to bring on a very talented team of people, which we probably would not have been able to, recruit on our own. So it's not necessarily that we have a strategy on acquisitions as much as it is that, if people reach out to us, we try to see if it's a fit or not.
Okay, and also about your events business too. I know a lot more newsrooms who are doing events. They're trying to bring it back, post-COVID, and there's a lot of challenges of that as well. How are you guys dealing with that as far as how are you bringing people back to, get back into events and having them attend? Are you doing virtually? Are you doing live in person right now? How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, so we're doing both. We have an event that we're broadcasting tomorrow night, but we had a group of business leaders come to a catering hall about 2 weeks ago. We recorded each of them getting their awards. They networked with each other. So it was a small group. It was probably under 50 people that were together. And then it's all put together into an hour probably recorded event that people will watch. But we are planning on going back to live food and kind of wine events this summer outdoors. So I think it'll be, a wait and see in terms of like indoor business functions. But I think, the biggest thing is just to start them, even if they're like conversations with community leaders or business leaders. I consider that, some type of event. And a lot of it, I feel like Zoom has made it very cost effective to do it. So I feel like starting it, the barrier to entry has, if anything, come down because of Zoom. You can get a lot of people to attend something. The first Zoom webinar I did was like at the end of March, and I called my estate attorney because I have 2 little kids. So I want to make sure, is my will and everything in place. So I said, you know what? Why don't we do a webinar? So he was like, fine. So me and him did a webinar. I sent out an email blast, and we had like 500 RSVPs. So I was like, all right, we have something here. So let's do sell it now to another. So I went to my sales team and said, all right, I did this one. We recorded it. We sent it out. They sold it to another estate attorney. And then we have done it literally for urologists up through buying real estate in Brooklyn. And we're doing them, 3 to 5 days a week. We charge people to do them. And it's great because they're getting the emails of everyone that RSVPs. So how much would your clients be willing to pay for 500 emails of people interested in a will? 500, they probably only need 20 and they're happy. So you don't have to have 500. We have a nice reach, but I think clients are willing to pay for a very specific audience, even if it's small. Plus, they have the webinar, they can put it on their website, they can put it on their social, they can put it in their email newsletters. So it's great publicity for them. So it's not, there's a lot of value in them, even if like you're not able to get attendance. They have a video that they can use and say, listen, my local media outlet interviewed me, check it out. I think that's an easy way to start is literally call up your best account, tell them you want to do a Zoom interview, try to figure out how to make it engaging and not boring, keep it to a short period of time, and then go out to your sales team and tell them to sell it.
Yeah, there's one bright side to the pandemic is Zoom has made it more available to do events. It's now you can gather people over the country basically to come in and plug into events. So
yeah, the events. I mean, everyone saw our events. Our competitors started events, but they're very expensive when you do these like galas where there's 1,000 people. You have to pay $100 a person just for the catering. So it adds up, and you have to staff things with quality people. So there's always costs behind those. But literally with the Zoom that I'm talking to you about, I mean, we have a team behind it now because we were able to like do a lot of them. But you can start it, very easily. Like literally, you could start it next week at no cost. Time, a couple hours, but I mean, if you put a couple hours into it, you'll probably create a decent business.
okay, well, thanks, Josh. My next question goes to Tom. How did the community react to your name change to Shaw logo, and did that change to a single URL boost your overall traffic?
That's a good question. So because we just had the URLs redirect to that section of the website, there wasn't a whole lot of disruption as far as a different brand. So it's more like if someone goes to nwherald.com as the URL for Northwest Herald, and when you type that in, you go to a Northwest Herald homepage that's just part of it's technically like shawlocal.com/Northwest Herald. So people see the branding, but they're still seeing front and center what they were used to, and then there might just be extra stuff suggested to them from other markets, depending on if we think it might be regional or if it's trending or whatever. So there was not that much of a blowback. When we launched the brand, we also switched our CMS. We had been using a digital content management system out of Sweden called Roxen for the last like 20 years. And we switched over to ARC. And so when we made the switch, we lost a considerable amount of organic search traffic from Google. So our overall audience actually went backwards. Luckily, as I said earlier, we've been able to maintain our growth targets with our digital subscriptions regardless of that. You know, you're looking for a small percentage of that total audience to convert, and we're doing a lot with email to get that. And we're seeing, you know, it was in December, it's May now. Each month we've seen some of that organic come back as, you know, the sites get crawled more, but it just takes a little time to grow back. So overall traffic has not grown. We think in the long term it will, but it's going to take some time. And anecdotally, the community, the readers will kind of be like, oh, we love seeing the coverage of the game in Northwest Herald. What's this Shaw Local thing? So again, we're like, if we just erased all of the brands, it would be really bad, we think, because that's the most valuable brand we have in the consumers is that local newspaper name. And we think over time that digitally Shaw Local is going to become more relevant, and the local newspaper brands are going to remain relevant to predominantly those print readers.
Okay, and when you're talking to you know, advertisers, this is another question. You know, when you're talking to advertisers and new digital subscribers, what offers have you found to be the most appealing? Is Shaw Local something you're pushing towards, you know, new subscribers and advertisers to kind of get them on board with that?
Well, it's if I understand the question, it's two separate things. What kind of offers to subscribers, and then what kind of offers to advertisers?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with advertisers and then go back. With advertisers, they really want the local markets that they're trying to reach specifically. So in some cases, there's regional opportunities, but in most cases, if they would have bought the Northwest Herald website and print prior to the launch, they're still getting that either through site page specific ad placements or geo-targeting. More and more, and I'm sure it's like everyone on this call, is that we're bundling our solutions along with offsite targeted solutions to try and give a full, you know, effective campaign and try and be competitive with other targeted media. So most of what we do in advertising on the local side might be like, you're going to be included on Northwest Herald section of Shaw Local, and you're going to be targeting offsite, you know, through to your demographic target or in this geography. We do have regional clients that have taken advantage of that across the site, but our bread and butter is really mostly local advertising. On the consumer side, we do a variety of tactics. We try and just watch what others are doing and learn from who's succeeding and then follow them. A lot of what we do comes from like what stuff like Google's D&I Shift group has recommended over the last couple of years. You know, it's very common for us to do a low entry price point, like 1 month free or 3 months for 99 cents or something like that, and then move them up to a higher rate after that introductory period, and then continue to stair step rates up upon renewal each year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. Next question is for Eliza. You mentioned 79% of your retainers were retained, but you know, when your iPad experiment launched, how many advertisers were retained when you guys kind of made this push for the iPad?
We had pretty good retention. Like I said, we still have a single copy sales, and we have a Sunday print edition. We also figured out a way on our iPad edition where we readers could click on the ad and go straight to that advertiser's website. So that was a great addition. So I mean, it made an impact, but not a, you know, a severe impact.
Okay. And how do advertisers respond to the print replica? You know, once they kind of get on board, was there any kind of as far as getting them on board with that too? And what about sales training too, as far as having your salespeople going out there and selling this?
Well, I'm not in advertising. I'm in editorial, so it'd be hard for me to give a really complete answer to that. But I will say the one time I did tag along to pitch this to an advertiser, a big advertiser in Arkansas, they were really impressed with the Replica edition, just seeing all the things that you could do and how we could segment ads, you know, to different, you know, if it was for instance, Dillard's, that we could have a page for Dillard's and it would have, you know, a section, a small section on shoes, and you could click on that shoe and go directly to their website and buy that shoe straight from your iPad. I mean, that's pretty, direct. And then maybe lower on the page, there's a purse. You click on the purse and you go straight to their website and easily buy the purse. So I would say it was generally received pretty well.
Okay, thanks. And questions for Kayla. What kind of equipment does a small newsroom need to start with quality video content?
Yeah, so not much. Depending on what you're doing, we bought a green screen, which, when we first started, we paid $100 for it. Now we have a better one, but it's, $300 or $400 still. So green screens are not expensive. We used our photographers just regular DSLR cameras for the first 3-4 years. We only got a specifically video camera within the last year and a half. And lights. And that's pretty much it. Microphones. You can set up a pretty good little studio for $5,000. Depending on what kind of camera, what kind of lights you want. But we have 2 microphones for our podcast studio. We physically move our lights around, so it's doable for a small newsroom.
Okay. Can you give us an example of a story that lends itself to video, and what is the general length of your videos typically?
Mm-hmm. I know that Facebook likes videos to be more than 3 minutes. Typically, we have a little intro, a 30-second commercial for whatever we rotate. 1 commercial per episode or per day. So, between our 4 sponsors, they all get a commercial in a week. Our whole from front to back an episode is between 6 and 9 minutes. That's around the sweet spot for it. Any good visual storytelling. So we spend a lot of time going behind the scenes at the fire department. We've built a really good relationship with them. They let us in really close to their training ground so we can see how they practice going through a burning house. We go into a lot of public school classrooms, where they're focusing on STEM so much right now. So instead of just writing about it, I'm not knocking that at all. I'm a print journalist, but being able to go in and see 2nd graders building something is really awesome. Events are great. So we tend to advance events in the paper, and then we go and cover them on video. So just, anything that would be hard to just write about without any visuals.
Thank you for attending today. We appreciate you coming in for the PNA Community Newspaper Forum, and to all of our speakers, Eliza, Tom, Josh, Kayla, thank you all for coming in and sharing your insights. They are appreciated. I think everyone here has taken away something new today than they had before they arrived. So